Hello and welcome to Old Faithful. I'm your host, Matt Trask. My thanks to Perfect Wave Productions. My thanks to Jay and Steve, making us look good down here. Please support my friends at Black Hills Blend Espresso, 4 locations here in town. We're going to jump right into it because I am so excited. This is the third of the 4 guitars that I wanted on the show before the show started. I am so overjoyed. And of those 3, I've had 2 of the 3 players. And so life is short, and I'm glad to get the player and the guitar on the show. Mr. Joe Wilt, how in the hell are you, buddy?
It's great to be here. Thank you, Matt.
For coming on my show.
Oh, glad.
We have a lot to talk about, including this guitar, but just you are, I believe we can all agree, a Black Hills music institution. You and your brother and your whole family. Why don't you just tell us about you?
Well, basically, I started my family. Everyone played, we just kind of grew into it. So it's almost hard to say when we started, but like in 76 is when Tom and I got into it.
Okay.
What happened, I started taking guitar, and then I went on this trail ride, on a horse trail ride.
Okay.
And then my little brother Tom, he was monkeying with my guitar. And when I got back a week later, he was going to get better than me. And I said, "There's no future in guitar. Play something else." I had to stop that right away. I said, every fool and his uncle plays guitar. You got to play something else. You got to play fiddle. There's other instruments out there. So in a way, that's kind of true, kind of funny and true. But he picked up bass and was playing bass, but he was just. So he took up harmonica and then eventually fiddle. And,
sure.
And our parents my dad bought and sold small bars and actually,
okay.
And they played in their own, provided their own entertainment, family operation. And
I see.
And through the years and like I said, my dad played with his brother. Mm-hmm. That's where the Wilt Brothers actually goes back several generations. Uh-huh. Originally, it was farms in southwestern Minnesota. Wilt Brothers Farms is where that name originally. 3 brothers. Seems like every generation, 3 brothers always did something together.
Okay.
Yeah, but music was always a part of it. But
right.
Yeah. So and that's kind of how it kind of grew into it. So there was always guitars around and instruments and amps and old Fender amps.
Sure.
So we didn't when Tom and I were kids and Steve, we didn't have to buy equipment to get started.
Oh, sure.
It was kind of nice because
right.
that's kind of a big commitment, when you're learning.
So I like diversionary questions here on the show. Was that your last trail ride ever?
Probably one of the bigger ones. We lived up in Minnesota. It was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you had to keep an eye on Tom. You didn't have time for horse riding after that.
Yeah. I had to. I had to take it the profession and keep him off the guitar. Yeah. It was
staying on the covered wagon while Tom was getting leaps and bounds ahead of you on guitar.
Yeah, I had to stop it right away.
Yeah. So how did this iteration of the Wilt Brothers end up in the Black Hills of South Dakota?
Well, my dad bought a bar, originally in 71 and through 73, and then that bar, then he bought a bar, went back to Minnesota, in Brainerd, Minnesota, and that's when Tom and I started playing. We were kids. We started playing little taverns. My brother Steve on drums, and Tom, and then my dad bought in 76, bought the Fireside Lounge in Sturgis.
Oh! And
at that time, it was there was an Oasis right next door. And now that's one big bar.
Right.
But it was a small bar, and we played. And in fact, in the rally, this is the honest God's truth, the Sturgis Rally, we were the only ones that had music 6 nights a week. That was in 76 through 79. And the bowling alley in Sturgis had music on Thursday and Friday. But we would have music all week long during the rally. And now it's like, it's like 2-week deal with big concerts and big, it was kind of...
So at the time, and that was in the old days of the rally, that was, shall we say, the legit Sturgis Rally.
Yeah.
Was that a huge draw?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it was packed every night. Yeah, it was...
Did the crowd demand music that was outside of your usual
Well, we played a lot of Charlie Daniels type stuff with the fiddle.
All right.
Charlie Daniels was good. Maybe they wanted more rock, but we played, they like Merle Haggard. They like kind of like your real original roots type people. They kind of and Charlie Daniels was new then.
Right.
And we were doing all that stuff.
Sure.
And we didn't try to look like the long-haired country boys, but we kind of ended up looking that. Not trying to, but maybe we fit in then. But so we were doing those songs. The kids come up and ask you to do a Charlie Daniels song like, I said, yeah, we did that song when it was brand new. You know what I mean? So we got, it went over that kind of
Sure.
stuff. They kind of like that. So
Who was the bass player in that original?
that was
band?
our father. Our dad,
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah, and a great singer, Ray Price type singer. You know,
Okay,
you know,
but he learned all the bass parts to the newfangled Charlie Daniels and the.
Yeah, well, he used to tell us.
The Merle Haggard.
He used to tell us because he was more of a singer,
Right.
But he was a good music teacher. In fact, his brother, my uncle, was a great guitarist. But one time they had a small music store for a short while, and my dad's students were playing really good. And Dick, just because you're a great player, don't mean you're a great teacher. Teaching's
Right.
kind of an old art in itself.
Right.
And my dad should have been a music teacher. He was probably very good
Okay.
at, very very smart at analyzing and teaching people the basics to get them going.
Mm-hmm.
So he played bass. So he kind of struggled at some of this, well, I remember learning "Devil Down to Georgia." That
Right.
bass line's kind of kill you know. So yeah, and he'd say, "I can't do that." In fact, learning that song, I got a story comes to mind. And he'd always tell us, "Oh, I can't do that." And no, there's no such word as can't. Well, then he was trying to learn that song,
Right.
when it was brand new, and we had to on a 45 record, you know.
Right.
And then he said, "Well, I can't do that." We said, and Tom told, "I thought you said there was no such word as can't." And he said, "Well, if I could do that, I would be a bass. I'd be playing steel. I'd be doing something worthwhile." He said, "Yeah, yeah, we had a lot of fun." Yeah.
So we need to move right along here. We have to talk about this guitar. This is one of my favorite guitars ever. I think it's the first Gibson I ever saw.
Oh, is that right?
I do believe it is, yes. Tell us about this guitar, please.
Well, what happened is my uncle, my mentor, he's a kind of a Gibson guy, kind of a jazz Hank Garland type guitar player. In fact, he
The fabulous
a guitar and good old stock country and jazz type picker. Of course, he played Gibsons all the time, and he had a 335 at the time. He still has it, a 68. He has several guitars right now, but and he played that guitar. It was his main guitar, like this was mine, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted one of those, obviously, and I had a chance to get one at a music store, Bridge of Harmony in Brainerd, Minnesota. They had used one, and it happened to have been a 68.
Wow.
I'm going, wow, and it only for $500. This is an 82,
Right.
$500, and I was kind of on the road. And when I get back to Rapid, I can take the money out of my bank account, and then I'll get it. And like a week later, it was sold right away.
Right.
Yeah. And, but they had this, and so I ended up buying this.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, I was disappointed I didn't get the red 325 only because my uncle had one.
Right.
You know, in fact, I think Larry Carlton's not red, but I think his is a 68.
Yeah,
so
it
I
could
always
be,
wanted so that guitar, the way it looked, I just dreamed of my dream
Sure.
guitar at the time. And so I ended up settling on for this, a 345. And like I was telling you earlier, this the baritone switch, I guess in the 70s, they kind of made it the pickups out of phase, which the original ones didn't. And so I had a guy in Burnsville, Minnesota, eventually just took it out, you know.
Right.
But I kept the switch, and eventually it fell off, and that's why you have this layer. But so
There you go. And you were telling me non-original knobs.
yeah, what happened is they used to have this vintage. This is like had the black knobs that looked like that was
Right.
on a Fender amp, and they eventually fell off, and then I had Scott Pack when he refretted it.
One refret, original tuners.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll get a shot of the headstock.
Yeah.
And you don't clean it regularly, I notice.
Well, how that started? It started out as a joke. And my uncle, his stuff was all dirty. In fact, I play steel guitar as well, and his steel was really dirty.
He will be back with the seal, by the way.
And anyway, and I play an Emmons now. But I was my old show bud that I had for all those years. And anyway, well, he laughed at me because all my stuff was shiny and brand new.
Right.
And this guitar was actually kind of, I bought it used, so it wasn't perfect. But I kept everything just spotless. And
Right.
my uncle made fun of me. You look like a dude. You look like a kid. He'd always tease me. And then I said, well, I'll fix him. So I didn't clean my steel or this guitar for a year.
Right.
I'll fix him, I figured. And then we got back together. He's up in Minnesota, and he said, oh, that's all new dirt. And he blew, and dust kind of flew in. And so I'll fix him. Well, needless to say, I won the competition after a while. Yeah. So it started out as a joke, and then everyone said, don't clean it. No,
Right.
it got to be a thing to joke about and talk
Right.
about. So I never cleaned it. It hasn't been cleaned since, I believe, 84 or 85.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a while.
Yeah, I got dirt from Wyoming to wherever.
Hey, a collection of America's dirt right here on this guitar.
That's right,
The upper
yeah.
Midwest dirt.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about this. We have mentioned the fabulous Hank Garland and the influence of jazz on country.
Yeah.
And the Nashville sound was very jazzy.
Yeah.
And then earlier before the show, we talked about the Strat country.
Yeah.
Mostly of the 80s, but the influence of the Fender Telecaster in country music is undeniable.
Right.
Which is a fancy way of saying dude, how do you get this to sound like a Telly?
Well, I didn't know there was any rules at the time. I was too dumb. What happens, when I grew up, a lot of people were attracted to the 335 style guitar. This is a 345. But,
Right.
Larry Carlton was a studio musician, as you know, and so was Lee Ritenour. And all the country guys, when you watch Nash, you'd turn on, see the Grand Ole Opry live. All
Right.
the guitar players at the time were playing 335.
Sure.
They originally played big fat Gibsons, and then
Right.
they played Birdlands, and
Right.
played Birdland and this. And so a lot of the sounds that you want to duplicate, like I Beg Your Pardon, I Wouldn't Promise You a Rose Garden,
Right.
was probably done with a 335.
Sure.
And so you wanted part of that sound. And then, of course, the Telly sound, the Buck Owens thing, and all
Right.
that. My father did a lot of Buck Owens and Merle Haggard, and so I didn't know there was any rules that you had to have a Telly.
Right,
So I just
yeah.
started when the compressors got a hold of that with a compressor, which I don't have hooked up, but I use a compressor on this, and the compressor on this guitar would kind of thin it out a little
Right.
bit. It wasn't perfect, but it was.
Right.
But I didn't, play the back pickup and they play a Merle Haggard song. I
Right.
didn't care, you know what I mean? So
So the secret is just doing it.
just doing
Is
it,
what
yeah.
you're- and maybe
Yeah.
a compressor.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
Fender amp.
A Fender amp really does
Help.
does it well, yeah.
By the way, he didn't bring his amp, and that's fine. We got amps here in the shop. He's playing through a twin reverb. You bring 2 amps to most gigs, and you play your steel through a PV, and you have selected the Fender Mustang.
Well, actually,
as your
I
performance
have
guitar.
that Cyber Twin as well,
Oh,
which I need to
okay.
get fixed up. I should bring it down
Sure.
here. But I bought that Mustang as a practice amp for
Oh.
rehearsals. And nowadays, your biggest complaint with a band is you're too loud,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
then we all heard that before. And so sometimes, and you're trying as a guitar player, you're trying to get a certain tone or sustain, and volume happens to be a byproduct.
Right.
And like when you're doing those Telly plays, those licks, sometimes it gets loud
Right.
because you're hitting the strings hard.
Right.
And so sometimes that smaller amp works out good.
Right.
You know. I'm getting sloppy. I gotta practice. But anyway, so I didn't know there was any rules, so I just went for it. Yeah.
The Fender Mustang, I had one for quite a while, and I did like it. Just because of the nature of what it is, you end up with things that don't exist in real life. For example, a Fender twin reverb with a master volume.
Right.
Which is
exactly.
really neat.
Exactly,
You can get
yeah.
more tone. No one in the world knows what an actual Fender twin reverb turned all the way up sounds like. Mm-hmm. You have to guess, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we were talking about your pedal board. You have since gone to a full pedal board.
Yeah, I went
But
out.
back in the old days, and you get your amp and your guitar, and then maybe you need a chorus for one song, or a phaser for one song, or a delay, and you end up with all these pedals. And the basic equation is that the more pedals you have in the chain, the worse your beginner tone is.
Yeah.
And so this man got around that. The simplest method ever for years and years and years. I'll let you tell us about
Well, I used to just the only effect that some of these amps have like a Cybertron has rock channels for
Right.
everything. You do a rock song, you got a good,
Sure.
other channels, and then so sometimes you wanted that old overdrive for that kind of taking care of business type
Right,
thing,
yeah.
that chunk there. But anyway, and so I would leave, and I'd use batteries because I'm so clumsy. I'm jumping
Right.
up and down from the steel guitar to
Right.
this, and when I play steel, I keep the guitar on and play guitar, on steel, and then and so I would always break my cables if I had those adapters and all
Right,
that. So I just had
yeah.
batteries, so I want to save on the battery.
Right.
Early part of the night, we were playing quiet. The only thing I had on was a compressor, so I leave that unplugged.
Right,
And
yeah.
like I think you're talking letting the overdrive plugged and plug
Right.
that in later, when I need it real quick.
And he'd actually bend over and unplug one pedal and take it out.
It aggravated the band. They wanted to shoot me when I do that. Yeah,
I loved it. And we have to talk about one other thing. Apparently, it only happened in one spot. At Joe's place here in Rapid City.
Oh yeah, just south of here. Yeah, my overdrive pedal. I can't play it at that club for some reason. It picks up radios, truckers, whatever.
It sounded very Guns N' Roses, actually. Breaker 19, there's been a break-in. It was awesome. I loved it, too.
Yeah.
I did this. I try and make this show not about me, but I did have one amp, and I didn't have any pedals at the time, and I was living in Wall, South Dakota. At certain times of the night, it would pick up emergency dispatch signal.
Yeah.
And scare the hell out of me,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So you do have, I'm so glad you brought this guitar, and you are definitely invited back with your steel. You do have other guitars.
Yeah, I have several now. I got.
And you were waiting on a big one.
Oh, that Brent Mason made a limited edition Telecaster. I'm waiting on that.
Right.
Coming
And
in.
this is a 70, we think maybe a 76.
Yeah,
guitar.
it could be. More likely a 77. A guy once
Okay.
told me that kind of knew something. It's probably a 77. We know it's not 75 or 4 for sure.
Okay,
You know,
all right.
So it's, yeah.
And the Brent Mason Telly is based on a highly modified 70s Fender Telecaster.
About 67 or 68, yeah.
Oh, it's a
I guess
67.
he had come to National as a parts guitar.
Right.
About a 68, and he put in Seymour Duncan pickups.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
stacked.
Him and Don Kelly had gone to the guitar store. I bet you know that story.
Yeah, I didn't know who it was he was with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
So 70s, we were talking about that. 70s guitars are not, for years they were kind of maligned, but there's nothing wrong with a 70s guitar. is
no,
there?
and they're well, a lot of people. I think what happened, just like when Buck Owens come out, they knew Fender personally. They gave him the current guitar, which
Right.
is a '60s Telly versus the '50s. let's
Right,
say.
yeah.
Obviously, Ray Nichols played, I think, a '53.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, they just brought a brand. Like Jimi Hendrix played a Strat. He bought a new one from the
Right.
music store. So 68 to I guess they're worth a lot. 68 Strats.
Right, yeah.
Because Hendrix just happened to buy a new one. you know what
Right,
I mean?
yeah.
Wasn't playing a 57. You know what I mean? And yeah, there was a lot of now 70s guitars you can't afford them. They were
Right.
like everyone during the 70s. You know, you trade a guitar off. Well, I had a Strat. I sold, you know, and I didn't want to sell it. It was my dad's Strat when I bought a 175. And I wanted to keep that. It was like a 60s Strat.
Right.
And I said, we got too many. It's not free CBS. Just trade it. It's my guitar. I said, no, Dad, I got the money cash to buy it. And, no, just, you know. We had old amps. They were tools. So my dad, he loved them. But he was like, oh, yeah, we got I had an old free CBS Twin. And it was my dad's amp. And I went and bought a steel amp. And he said, yeah, we're getting too many amps in the garage. I wish I had it now. Yeah, yeah. And he loved this stuff. Knew it'd be. I said, Dad, that's gonna be worth something someday. And yeah, so yeah.
We definitely have to talk about one more thing. Approximately 10 years ago, you became very interested in gypsy jazz.
Yeah.
And you started playing that. To my ears, since then, you have always been a phenomenal guitarist as long as I've known you. But it seems like that gypsy jazz influence has affected your entire style.
Yeah,
Would you agree
learn,
with that?
Yeah, I think it made me a better rhythm player because I used to play rhythm guitar. I play some leads and on the heads,
Right.
and stuff, and of course the great J.D. Fiedler, our local jazz
Guru
around here, the great jazz guitarist, and I've always wanted to work with him just to learn some jazz instead of being a jazz wannabe, trying to be a real guy, right? And so it's been a lifelong dream, but I've been pretty busy raising a family, you're busy playing your Western band, and working your day job and doing everything you do, and so you never get to. So it's always a lifelong dream to play like jazz like JD can.
Right, yeah.
So it was his idea to start this gypsy jazz thing with my brother on violin.
Right.
And we've always liked Grappelli's playing and so we started working on that.
Sure.
Just having fun with
Sure.
it. Yeah.
Do you guys still get together and play?
We haven't. COVID kind of, as you know, slowed a lot of things down.
Right.
And it's hard to get enough gigs in jazz anyway, so we haven't. It's kind of on. We're kind
is
of
a little difficult.
Kind of waiting things get a little better, but.
Well, I have not seen you guys live. I definitely need to find out when we get back in the saddle with the back on the wagon train of gypsy jazz.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. And it's all acoustic. We're playing gypsy guitars and. You know.
And so are they mic'd or do they have pickups?
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't found a good pickup that we like yet.
Just old school mic'd guitars.
Yeah.
Do you have a Selmer copy?
It's a copy of a copy. I got a real cheap one.
Right.
JD's got a little better one, but mine's just a little $400 or $500 job. Sounds good. For what it is. Actually, it's louder than his. When we play it, you have a hard time. Well, it's part of that Guitar Masters thing last spring with JD and I, and we played a set of gypsy jazz together.
Right.
And my guitar, it's louder than his.
Right.
It's a cheap. It's kind of quiet. But yeah.
Well, do we have anything else we need to talk about here?
Oh, I can't think of nothing. But I just music is something that you can enjoy your whole life. You just like we're just weekend warriors anymore. You know, doing what we do.
Yeah.
summer you play some bigger stuff, but I enjoy playing more now than I ever did.
Right.
It's just something about it.
Well, good for you.
Just enjoy seeing the people. You know what I mean?
Are there any recordings of the Wilt brothers or?
Not really. We
Not really?
were kind of lame when it comes to that. Someone was just telling me the other day, you guys saw an old friend. This thing,
right.
In fact, a couple of days ago, she said, how come you guys never record a CD? And we were always going to, but you never do. I had some home recording equipment back in the 90s, for the studio. I did some things but nothing. I wish we would have,
There are a couple of clips of the Wilt brothers with J.D. Fiedler on YouTube playing some gypsy jazz. And this was recorded. I imagine it's available somewhere. And they used it for the bumper music on the Live with Jim Thompson show. Can you help me? What was that called?
Oh, that was J.D. had a good relationship with South Dakota. That guy from the South Dakota Public Broadcasting thing, and we did some things. And there's a couple of recordings. That was before I was in the group.
Oh, okay.
But we did something later. I don't know if they played that, but
all right.
Yeah.
Well, it had fiddle, so I assume that was Tommy Wilt.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
That was before. In fact, Brian Williams was playing with him.
Okay. All right. So. Honest to God, the first couple of times I heard it, we all know, or we should know, that Willie Nelson was highly influenced by the father of gypsy jazz, Django Reinhardt. I honest to God thought it was a Willie Nelson composition.
Yeah.
I really did. Yeah. But do you remember what that's called? That composition?
Nuage, you mean? Or is that the song you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it available on Spotify or iTunes or YouTube or somewhere?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right.
And we did a recording. We did a couple other things, JD, but I don't know if it's available, but Tom wasn't with us at the time, but I did something with JD, and it was on live on South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago, 3 years ago.
All right.
And I have it on a CD, but it was
sure.
Chet Murray, our bass player, on upright, and JD and I. But,
well, if you'd like to hear that, go to Joe Wilt's house, and he will put the CD on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the old-fashioned way. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. Gypsy jazz and country legend John Jorgensen says, change your strings. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you play us out, and thank you so much for being on my show, Joe.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
You bet. Don't forget my sponsorship with Trask LLC. Large round and square bells, 515-0858, and thanks for watching.